Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Dayvon McCarrell, or Dr. Mac, as we lovingly call him. With 20 years of military, business, and academic experience, he leads teams through multifaceted corporate culture change. With his unconventional teaching and leadership style, he reaches uncommonly high levels of success. Full disclosure, Dr. Mack and I served in the Air Force many, many moons ago, and we've come together again to discuss leadership and culture change. Welcome, everybody, to today's discussion. We're meeting with Dr. Dayvon McCarrell. We're going to talk about organizational culture. He is a rapper extraordinaire. I told him I was going to say that, but he's not.
Love it.
Well, welcome, Dr. McCarrell. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, good sir. Doing well. Good to hear from you.
Good. It's good to hear from you, too. Thanks for taking time to talk with us and help out some lowly doctoral candidates and some researchers try to figure out awesome ways to help out with new leaders up and coming, trying to figure out how to manage that whole corporation organizational culture nonsense that we hear so much about. And so we're super excited to get your wealth of information and knowledge on this subject, since you are an organizational culture expert.
All right, I'll tell you what I don't know. Cool.
Perfect. That works out well. So we'll start it off. I'll start off with a really easy question, just for those who are listening in that don't know anything about organizational culture. According to you, what is organizational culture?
It's the pulse of the community. That's how I see it. The pulse community is, if you sit back and you just observe how people interact with each other and what type of their character, how they carry themselves and so forth, you start to see the whole dynamics of the interaction of people and what they bring to the organization itself. Because there's too many different backgrounds to try to cookie cut anything. Mm-hmm. So if you sit back as a leader and observe, it's just the pulse. You got to get a pulse of the community.
I like that.
And that's how I see it.
That's awesome. I like that. That keeps it fairly simple for us that don't know much about it. So thank you. Thanks for that.
No problem, Dr. Student.
That's good times. It's the pulse of the community. I really like that. When it comes to the organizational, who sets that culture?
By the word academia, it should come from the top. But from the top, if you really think about it, like CEOs are not doing the daily work. They're making deals. They're setting up the big picture. They got a 30,000-foot view. It's the workers. It's the people who get their hands dirty. Mm-hmm. Now, I say that just as an overarching statement of getting their hands dirty. It doesn't mean that they're specific laborers and so forth. These are the people that execute the mission daily, and those are the people that really set the tone. And so the issue. Okay, I guess I'm going a little bit further into this, but the issue or the conflict comes from when people, the first level, second level supervisors, are not in tune with what their subordinates are doing and how they are acting. They don't have the pulse. So they're expecting, or they're trying to force upon what they think it should be versus understanding what's going on and trying to better, enhance, and or slightly correct so that things are working in the same direction.
Okay. And at the beginning, you said, according to academia, it's a top-down culture. I did hear that in there. But in real life, it's not necessarily a top-down culture. So what would a first-line supervisor's job be as far as trying to set an organizational culture, first on their team if they're a first-line supervisor?
They need to talk with their people. There's an old poem I live by. At first it was stupid, but now as I got older, wait a minute, I understand that. It's called the wise old owl, right?
Okay.
The wise old owl, right? The more he sat, the less he spoke. The less he spoke, the more he heard. Why can't we be like that wise old bird? So, many, many moons ago, you shall hear me talk. I am me. I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. Shut your mouth, subordinate, right?
Mm-hmm.
It didn't go so well, right?
Yeah,
Not
it worked in the 50s.
Right. Right. But if you actually sit back and listen to people, my goodness, you know how much easier my job became when I just listened to what they were actually saying. So that's the first step, I believe, is that if you have the patience and the wherewithal to sit there and ask questions to understand, get to know people, what their goals, aspirations are, because not everybody wants to be king of the world. Some people just want to just do their job and go home. Some folks want all the accolades. Some folks are kind of teeter-totter between the two. You'll see, different dynamics. Some people are introverts. Some people are too extroverted. So you have to just know your people. So it really boils down to just sit and listen and know your people. And then you can kind of morph into, okay, this is what my team is. This is how my team is gelling. And that's how you start set the tone, because you're allowing them to, you are fostering growth. You say fostering growth and what works. And then you cut out, of course, what doesn't work to the best of your ability. But we all know how that works.
Yeah. Some of us that have worked for military-esque organizations,
Yes.
there's a locus of control that gets smaller and smaller in top-down hierarchical organizations.
Along with my favorite knife hand. There it is.
The nice directing leadership style. With
Right.
a knife hand pointing at you, the threat of death if you don't comply. And,
Exactly.
And that works for some organizations, but not all, as you pointed out there. You were talking about, I was interested because you were talking about how listening to the people at the bottom helps formulate that organizational culture, and that leader better understands that and can move forward with that guidance. What role does the top people have? What do they have in that situation? Because everything you read in books that are published and everything else, the boss at the top has to set the tone by putting together the mission and the value statements and all those things. And so how does the team leader, how does that first line supervisor try to mesh those two? Because I could see at some point, if the culture on their team is vastly different than the culture that the boss is trying to push down on people, that conflict's going to come up, and somebody's probably going to lose a job if they can't manage that conflict.
Oh, indeed. So the job of leadership, if let's say you're a first line supervisor, is understanding the constraints, right? Because CEOs have a constraints and or goals, because if you go for a profit organization, it's the bottom line. We all know that, right? Yacht payments don't pay themselves. So I have to be able to make sure that my stakeholders can still afford their yachts. So these are the constraints I talk about. And that aspect, I think a lot of times is lost. The translation is lost from top down to the first line supervisor is, what are the constraints? Okay, what I'm trying to operate to, what are my goals, right? And so, or they call it KPP, your key performance parameters and so forth. So these are the constraints that first line supervisor has to be aware of. Now, this is where you, as a supervisor, you need to be able to convey that message to your subordinates. Say, look, I'm going to empower you guys to do this work, because you guys are adults. Nobody comes to work to do a crappy job. They want to do a good job.
That's a good point.
These are the expectations that, hey, we have to work towards. Here's the goals, right? Here's what we need to perform to. Here's what your task should lead to X. Your task should lead to Y. Here's the outcome. Okay. And so as a supervisor, first line supervisor, second line supervisor, you need to convey what those constraints are and how to operate within those constraints, so that the employees know, okay, you just don't have carte blanche. You do we can say what you want. You need to operate within this. Here's our box. You need to operate and exceed and move this box so that we are meeting and or exceeding target goals, because we are for profit. So that's the key thing for me.
That's a good point you bring up. How would a supervisor try to match those? Because you pointed out that nobody comes to work just wanting to do a crappy job. Most people come to work. Everybody comes to work pretty much because they want to do a good job. They want to make a difference, want to make an impact. And depending on, the generational nuances and the individual nuances, they'll have different individual motivations for coming to work. And so how does a supervisor match up those desires, those goals of the employee with that of the organization?
Well, I have to revert that back to the good old, one of the few things I got back from the military with the feedback sessions. Really, you have to hold those, individual one-on-one. I still live by the adage of if there's a female, two people are in there at all times. Door is open. And so with that being said, you have to be able to talk first you put the ball in their court. Get them talking about what they want and also be real about it, right? Let's say you have a younger employee, let's say under 5 years of experience. You have to understand that this is just a stopping point for them. They may be going on to other things, and you can't fault them for that. So you have to say, hey, look, if better opportunities come up, I do understand. So please don't think I'm commanding your undying fealty and to chop off your finger for me. Okay, all right. So I understand as a boss that you're searching for the best opportunities for you to grow and exceed. And if things work out well, then you'll be a long-term employee. If not, then you look for other fields. I get that. But while you're here, after I get all their goals and aspirations and so forth, I say, okay, you know what? Even if you don't plan on staying here for past 10 years, let's see what you can get the most. What can you provide for the most to us based on your strengths? We can work on your weaknesses and so forth, like a SWOT analysis, right? We can also develop you, right? Put the time and effort into you, because some people may say, or some bean counters, right? They may say, you put all that time and effort in them, you spent, $10 million for only $2 million return. I think it's more so about the intangibles, right? So I say the intangibles. Think about this for a second, right? Let's say we're operating at a loss, let's say of $100,000 for the month. Now, if you're a supervisor, oh, you suck, you lost me money. But if you peel back the onion and find out, whoa, this person actually stopped the bleeding. So I could have lost 300,000, but only lost 100,000 because of the steps and procedures and the work efforts that this person actually did. So am I mad I lost 100,000 from the big picture? Yeah. But am I even happier that I didn't lose 300 because this person he's kind of saved the day, even though we still lost? Because it wasn't his fault or her fault that we lost 100,000. It's just that's the way things happen. But this person had the empowerment and the wherewithal to say, hey, you know what? Let's do this so we can stop the bleeding. And then boom, and that goes back to the supervisor not taking the data at face value, but to peel back the onion. You can start asking the 5 whys and stuff. Hey, what actually happened?
Okay, so you're talking about spending a lot of time with the people that are working for you and with you. You're spending time with them because that takes a lot of time to have those conversations and get to know them at the level where you can have that level of trust. How do you do that with all of the time demands that are on supervisors?
Daily tag ups. You got to make time. It's just daily tag ups. Whether it's 15 to 20 minutes, I find it most productive. You just do it 8:30. So basically my calendar is probably full between 7:30 and 9. Just a daily tag up with my subordinates. Hey, what's going on? How you doing? How's the family? It doesn't have to be specifically about work, but just getting to know people and know I genuinely care and say, hey, any goals or anything new changing your job? And then soon enough, oh yeah, so we got this going on, and then they just spill the beans, whether good or bad, they just start talking about work, and then you get, hey, you know what? And so the biggest thing I do is that, and so after they give me their sob story, I tell them, okay, What you gonna do about it? And they'll, huh? Yeah, what you gonna do about it?
I
Give me a
like
plan.
that. You ask them what they want to do about it, not necessarily what you're going to fix on it. Because in the world, you mentioned military earlier. In military world, in the 50s corporate environment, it was all about what the boss was going to do to fix it.
Right.
But you're talking about, you're now pushing it on them because it ultimately it's their job, it's their life, it's their responsibility to make sure that they do their job to the best of their ability. And so you're just making that, you're just solidifying that requirement basically by asking them, what are you going to do about it?
Right. Exactly. I say, hey man, I'm here to support. There's one way to skin a cat, right? You may see it differently than I do. As long as you can back your actions up and execute with facts and data. That's all everyone really cares about in the end, facts and data. You make the best decision that you can make based on the available information that you have. And so I can't fault nobody for that if the result turns left. Because we both talked about it, we both agreed upon it. And if it does go left and somebody wants to get their head chopped off, then I'm the first to go to the chopping blocks. Because I say, hey, I thought it was a good idea based on X, Y, Z. So don't blame that person because I empowered him to do it. I'll take the hit.
And that's a huge measure of personal responsibility that we don't really see too much in the media nowadays.
Imagine that concept that we learned, huh? It's always your fault.
It's always someone else's fault if I turn on the news.
Right.
And so how do we get an organization where we have that personal responsibility? Because if all that my people see when they turn on the news or social media is somebody else's fault, how do we get them out of that mindset? I liked the part of you talking about mirroring it. You were mirroring that. You were demonstrating that to them. What other things can we do to help them get that responsibility mindset for that culture piece?
Oh, well, turn to enlist in the Air Force and work for radar and have everyone blame you for everything. Then you get used to it. No, but
in the military, they blame you. It's always your fault. It's no one else's fault.
Exactly. So you learn to accept responsibility because you get blamed for everything. No, but in all seriousness, no, that's a tough one because it's really a bad learned behavior. For example, just recently, I had to give a negative consultation on one of my subordinates' performance.
That's inevitable. Every leader is going to have to do that at some point.
So it was a joint effort because my boss had to sit in on it because the client did not like his performance. So as I was going through the feedback session, she liked the way that I handled things because it wasn't more so on just, you suck. It was like, because I knew him through my daily feedbacks. I said, look, I understand that he truly is an introvert. And I really don't see how he made to a lieutenant colonel. Okay. He's retired lieutenant colonel. I don't see how he made it, but
that's tough. Okay, that's tough.
He truly is an introvert. His answers forever is yes. And he's silent.
There's a lot of boards you have to go through to get those promotions too.
That's what I'm saying. So I didn't understand. So after, I'm going to say damn near a month of daily tag ups, he's finally started to open up to me. Right. So bottom line is that it's not due to his lack of skills, not due to his lack of wanting to do anything. It's just the position he's put in. It requires a person who is an extrovert, who's always on top, who always got something to say at every meeting, every design review, every type of engineering thing we do. He always has something to say, and that's the type of support that the client needed, was that person to be on the hip of the program manager, and they walk side by side. The program manager and the engineer are working side by side, holding hands, and everything's lovely, and they both know what each other knows, right? And program managers are high strung in the government, so they're very high strung.
Typically,
so they want somebody to match that on the engineering side, and that's just not him. He just like, I don't have anything to say. So they got mad. They got rid of him, or they said get him off the deal. And I told through this group setting, I said it's not about this individual skill set.
Mm-hmm.
It's about his personality and where he fits in. And we define him a place where he doesn't have to be so in a leadership role. He's a tasker. He's a doer,
mm-hmm.
right? Give him an engineering position that he's a doer. That they don't demand him to come up and brief everything, brief leadership, constantly know what's going on. He's a tasker. And so she was amazed by how I structured the feedback session and the counseling session and focused more on the positive and brought back some of the military stuff that we talked about and then said, hey, this is a we thing. We're going to get through this. Let's find something that fits to your skill set. Because you got way more to offer than what the client saw, and that's not fair to you. And so he was happy. And then the boss, when the other guy got the phone, she's like, I've never seen anything like that. Is that something you learned? I said, it's sort of like I was born in war, where I have to do this. you would not believe the amount of conversations I've had in various situations that I have to be politically correct and know how to navigate through. This was easy. Okay.
After 100 years in the military on active duty, it's inevitable that almost a daily basis you're giving some sort of corrective feedback actions to people.
That make you say, what in the double hockey stick?
Yeah. What is going on? Why did you do that? And that's typically the first response that most people have is what the but I liked that you pointed out you had to come back from that. You couldn't just approach it with the immediate knee-jerk reaction of what were you thinking? What were you doing? You use the information you learned from the years of working with him, the time working with him, and gaining an insight into his personality to recognize that it was really a personality difference is what you were talking about.
Yes.
You had a very type A program manager and a type I engineer, which typically overall, most engineers end up being a type I personality because they like to focus on the data, the engineering, and program managers not so much.
Right.
So,
which is why it kills me as an engineer because I'm too type A. I'm like, yo, let's talk. So that's why they love me because I'm always engaged.
That's good. That's good. And I'm sure what types of things did you have to do to learn to be able to manage both that extro and introvert tendencies that you have? Because you're an engineer, but you're also in these leadership positions. How did you make those two work?
Years of failure in the military.
Oh.
That's all. It really was. I mean, I can't sit there and say, well, I went to class and, I learned this and I read this book right here, boy, it taught me everything. No. Failure. From your experience using leading troops, when you first go through ALS, they give you 18 troops, and you're like, what the hell am I supposed to do with all these guys? What do I do? So after the many counseling sessions I received, based on me not knowing my people and always trying to do, hey man, you messed up, quit doing stupid crap, and learn how to be more empathetic per se, and actually listening more. It was more so just failures, and actually learning from those failures because I didn't want to repeat the same thing. Had to be in the office again, talking to 16 different people's leadership as to why I suck. This is why you suck, and that's how you get better. Get tired of that crap. So okay, how can I get better, right? And it's just more so of not wanting to see the boss for my mess up. So I better understand how to do this. And it took some years. It's not a thing that took I read a book on how to be a leader and all of a sudden I'm the top leader in the world. No, failure.
I like that. My grandmother used to call that the school of hard knocks. And it was usually hard knocks because she would hit us in the head and knock us on the head pretty hard when there was a failure. But interestingly enough, despite what we think, when we fail, we think that we fail, it's all done. You're still here. You're still alive. You've managed to overcome and progress to heights possibly not imagined when you were a brand new enlisted military person in active duty. And so you lived through it. So that's something that we as leaders should be able or need to actually convey to all of those who work for us, our subordinates, when it comes to failure, that failure is not the end like the word sounds like, but it's
Right.
it's a stepping stone on a ladder or a ladder rung.
Indeed.
Awesome. One of the things you mentioned in there that I really want to ask about is you talked about how you came at him for his specific feedback session and focus on the positives. How do we do that as leaders when almost every conversation we have and every piece of data that's pointed out to us is negative?
I did that because in the military, that's what we had to do.
Mm-hmm.
The format was, I'm gonna tell you why you suck, and then I'm gonna tell you how to get better. Okay, you did this. Okay, you're gonna do it again, or I'm gonna choke you out, and then this is what we're gonna do to get better, right? So because we had to keep that person, right? We just couldn't. We didn't have the power to say, okay, get out the military, you're done. Okay, it had to been a mile-long paper trail to get somebody out. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so you had to find ways to keep the slugs and make the slugs less sluggish. So,
Okay.
So on here, on the corporate world, since this is for profit, the first question I asked, because they told me I didn't do this counseling session. First thing I asked, what is your intention?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to keep this individual, or are you wanting to get rid of them? And say, well, we want to keep them. I said, okay. And that right there tailored to how I performed the counseling session. Now, if it was more so we don't get rid of them, then I would have told them there's no need to have a meeting. There's just you need to call him in the office and tell him he's no longer employed, or you want me to tell him that's fine,
Mm-hmm.
But there's no need to have a conversation. The only thing it needs to say is that due to your poor performance and the clients not willing to work with you, and we don't have anything for you, we're going to terminate your employment and call it a day. But if you want to keep the guy, then we don't need to focus on, why he spilled the milk, because it's done and over with. We didn't focus on, okay, how do we build this person back up, and not focus on the negative? Because you focus on negative and you want to keep him, hell, you say you beat him down some more. Why?
Mm-hmm.
You want to keep the guy. You got to trust that he wants to do good work. You have to trust that. Now, if he proves otherwise, after the second time, then hey, it's time to cut ties. We tried. Here's your pink slip. Give me your computer. Bye. But if you have to focus on the positive so that you don't resort the man or woman back to a child, right? I mean,
That's a good point.
I don't, I'm almost 50, and there are times when my dad still talks to me, and I still feel like I'm an 8-year-old kid.
That's what parents do. That's their job.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. And so I keep that in mind a lot. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm a grown man.
I'll bleep that out.
Yeah, pick that out, please. Dad, I can take you now. You know what I'm saying? What you talking? But I say that it's similar. You don't want to demoralize somebody to that state where they just revert back to that childlike mentality of just being spiteful or don't want to do anything, or they feel sorry for themselves. All right, you spilled the milk. Okay, now what? All right, this is how we get better, dude. Let's see where we can put you so that you can succeed in life.
That's interesting. I like that. It sort of mirrors. I wrote an article once and compared it to the Darth Vader and the Jesus approach. Darth Vader in Star Wars, historically, nobody wanted to mess up because he would literally choke them out or cut their heads off.
Right.
And so there was a literal, tangible failure, a fear of failure at that point, because if there was failure, it was an immediate reaction. There was no possibility of recovery. But in the world that you're talking about, we don't have to do that. And and we can see the benefits, because in Darth Vader's world, there was no one that was trying to rise to the top and exceed expectations, because it was a double-edged lightsaber, if you will, at that point, because if you exceeded expectations and made him look bad, you were still getting choked out.
Exactly.
But in the organization, the culture that you're talking about, it's more of a fostered approach of, we care about the individual. We respect the individual's knowledge, skills, abilities, their age, their tenure. We respect them as a person. And when they have a failure, we come at it from the prospect of improvement, continuous improvement, versus stop the immediate bleeding by putting a Band-Aid on it or cutting off the hand. That's like, I got a cut on my hand, a paper cut, but now I'm going to just chop my hand off because I'm going to stop the paper cut bleeding.
Exactly.
So that's good. It's really good. Can you give us an example of a previous organizational culture that you worked in that was a great example of an organizational culture?
Yeah. So, my very first job when I retired was with Boeing.
Okay.
There was a whole bunch of literature all over the board. They kept pushing this. We foster a culture of diversity. We foster this. We're encompassing. We don't care. You're all welcome. So this is strange to me when I came out the military. Like, what you mean? What is this stuff you're talking about? We're all crap. What are you talking about? I still had that mentality still, right?
Yeah.
And so as I watched, because I'm a people watcher, right? As I watched all these engineers and software guys, my take, again, I've been conditioned, right? Military conditioned us. That's what it is. You go to work, you're in I would say, a suit or a nice pair of slacks and a nice shirt, right? In a nice polo shirt or a nice dress shirt, okay? Tie, no tie, nice shoes. This is what you dressed for work, right?
Yep.
Well, as I go there, why am I the only one looking like that? I'm buckling around like, why is this guy in jeans and tennis shoes and a Van Halen t-shirt? Why is this guy got a long beard coming way down here? That's not within regs. Is he a knife hand? That's not in regs.
Yeah.
What the hell? It was just, it blew my mind.
The heavily regulated work culture wasn't existing there.
No. All they really cared about was, okay, they understood. One understands that people make the company. So if you foster the environment for them to actually be themselves, be comfortable, give them a safe space, then it doesn't matter, because all ideas are welcome, because that's all different. That's different people with different backgrounds. It really didn't matter. They all collaborated together. There was no, there was, but at the higher level, the good old boy system, that's always going to be prevalent in every organization, but it wasn't as noticeable, if you would, here at Boeing than it was at the other institution of work that we work in. So that community deal was strong, right? They all worked in open cubicles. Right? And they all and so I'm like, what the hell? Where's the privacy at? No privacy. You should be doing nothing but work anyway, right?
There's no need for that, right?
right. What if I want to surf the internet? Is that do work today? But anyway, so I appreciated the way that they created an environment. They basically created an environment where nobody really cared if you came to work, in a Van Halen t-shirt and jeans and shorts, right? Or they cared about shorts, but what I'm saying, in jeans, right? All they cared about is if there's a client coming, you got a meeting with the client, meaning that the government came over for a meeting. We all had to put on the suit and tie, right? It was dressed to the T, suit and tie, and everybody was very professional. But after that, it was just they allowed this. It was pushed. Welcome by differences, and so it blew my mind, really, and it still does. because I'm conditioned, and it's hard for me to break the conditioned environment. But that people just walking around just he said willy nilly, like, come on, man, I'm just not used to that. Just I need structure, guys. Get in line, focus. Institutionalized, if you would.
Well, to your point on that structure, there's a certain need for a structure, and you mentioned that already. Boeing had it where if you're client facing, then you need to present an image from the organization of professionalism in that point. But
Right.
outside of that, it seemed like they allowed you to focus on what they really wanted you to focus on to begin with, was the work that you were doing, not necessarily how am I going to fix my hair today or is my tie straight? Because when it comes down to the bottom line in the for-profit company, does your tie being straight actually benefit that?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So, that's a good point.
Exactly.
That's good. With that structure coming from the military, there's that heavily structured. Everybody has you walk a certain space, you stay on a certain side of the hallway, you wear the same clothes every day. You're dictated what you wear, you're dictated what you do and who you can talk to. While there's a measure of bottom-up communication, there's not a bottom-up communication that is equal with the lateral communication. So
I'm tracking.
What you're talking about at Boeing seems like there was an equal respect for all communication, no matter the proverbial pay grade.
Yes, I will say that so they had, of course we had worker bees, right? And they had first level, second level, third level supervisors. There was I could go to the chief engineer's office, knock on his door. Hey, I got a question for you. Come on in. Whereas doggone well in the military, let me talk to my first line supervisor. We talk to second line, talk to the chief, and then I got to get on the commander's schedule, and maybe he'll talk to me. But prior to talking to him, I need to talk to.
You have to hit all those other steps before you get
right.
there.
Right. Well, I can just bypass everybody and go straight to the chief engineer. Hey, I got a question. Or hey, man, is this in your inbox? I need this signed ASAP. Oh, thanks for bringing to my attention, because he or she get like 10,000 emails, and it get lost in the sauce, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they had that policy where if something's pressing and you need to talk to them about something, come on. I'm like, holy crap, are you serious? Can I knock on his door?
Yeah.
So I was like, the open door policy was there, and it was good.
That's awesome. How did that open door policy and that corporate culture they had, how did that impact the workflow?
The flow of information was good. I would say that was the best flow of information I've ever had. Because even though that person had their own office, so we're in a big, if you think about, I remember the movie Office Space, right?
Yes.
Okay, so everyone had the cubicles, right? Everyone had the cubicles, but then right around the corner there was an office. So that's how the setup was. And so even though he had his own office and plush seating, nice furniture, right? He can come out of his office and say, hey, he goes directly to who he needs to talk to. Hey, I need X, Y, Z, or what is going on with ABC, and vice versa. He can go, that person can say, hey, I need your signature for approval here. This is coming up due in 8 days. I need to sign. And you always go to him and say, hey, I need to sign because this is going to push your due date back if you don't sign it now, right? You always tell him that, right? Even though it wasn't, just the sense of urgency, get that person to conform. So how the office was set up and then how they really pushed on having that type of open door policy and everyone is welcome type deal. It's just they had it where it's okay. It just flowed. Everything flowed, and I was amazed by that. But I will say that some people really don't understand that Boeing loved engineers. If he was an engineer, he was second class citizen.
So there was outside of that, there was the culture was awesome, except for that. And then from a certain perspective, I can understand that, because that's what they focus on. They design, they build,
Yes.
that's what they do. That's where they make their money. So from a certain perspective, I can understand that. And so it seems to work okay for them now. But that would be what could in an environment like that, because there's likely to be other people in similar situations. What can you do in that situation to try to minimize that or to change the culture where there's not a second class citizen type group of people in the company?
You do what I did. What I did was I consistently told, all right, so the issue a lot of times was a lot of the engineers got older. Okay. So they was retiring.
Okay.
So now you got 30 years of experience walking out the door. Who do you give that to? Or how can you give it to? So they hire new engineers, fresh out of college or maybe a couple years of experience. And they're just learning, right? They're just learning how to be engineers. And so the issue when I was there was that we got a lot of young engineers, how do we get them trained? And so I told them consistently for every chance I had, I said downstairs, right? Because they put us on the top floors, right?
Yes, all the cool people get the higher floors.
Right. I said downstairs, you have over 600 years of experience. They're like, what? You have guys who spent 20, 25 years in the military working on that platform who can write you a dissertation with their eyes closed on a specific system. Why don't you use them? So here's where a lot of that comes into contract stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The contract indicated that people performing the work, who are charging to the funds because they create charge lines, right?
Yeah.
Charge lines.
Different accounts.
Right. So people, in order to charge to those specific charge lines, there has to be an agreed upon standard of qualifications, right? Must have a baccalaureate in engineering or higher, or a master's degree, So that being said, those guys downstairs didn't meet those qualifications. So from a contractual standpoint, they couldn't really support, because if you pull
that makes
guys
sense
away from and try to help, they need to charge that line because they're not doing that work anymore.
Correct. And then they violate the contract, and then that brings a whole bunch of my side of the house comes involved when the legal side gets involved. We don't like that.
So, right. Yeah. And so then I said, hey, you know what? Why don't you create a pot of money? Okay, because you guys already take 10% off the contract for management reserves, right? That's the old crap factor in case you run over. Why don't you take a little bit more and put it for consulting so that you can help these guys interact with get the younglings to interact with the old heads so that they can pass on that knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Because I told them there's nothing different. There's no difference between an engineer and a technician except for the math. That's it. I could do a triple integration and the technician will look at me like, what the hell are you talking about? So we both know the same thing. We both know, hey, it takes electricity, the voltage drop. We both know that, but we can do the math behind it. And then also do some material designs and so forth based on the math.
Mm.
But if you give that same person the same education without the math, it's still the same thing, except for the math. So, like, dude, quit treating them like second-class citizens. You had 600 years of experience down there. Use it, but that's all I could do. So I gave them a solution, and the solution was put a little bit more on management reserve, take a little bit more for consulting, so that you can train these young engineers. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck in the rut. Because even though you have, let's say, a 20-year experienced engineer, right?
Yeah.
That 20-year experienced engineer has been on a certain platform. Let's say he was on B-52s. Then you try to put him to the E3, he's just like a brand new engineer.
Mm.
Granted, it take a little bit. It won't take him as long to get spun up, but he's brand new. Correct,
because the underlying wiring is pretty simple and the same, but the way that the processes are allocated and all the other factors, because they're two different airframes, two different mission sets, two different purposes. So there's a lot of different things that are different. But in the interim, they're both airplanes.
Right.
So that makes a lot of sense. That's really I really liked what you were talking about, how as a first line supervisor in this instance, you were able to bridge the gap between the two by demonstrating, showing an example of how to treat others with respect and how to value their opinions and their education and their experience, and really practice and focus on that diversity and inclusion aspect that you were mentioning earlier that was all over the billboards at Boeing.
Right.
On how, that's really what it comes down to. Too many times now in political spectrum, diversity and inclusion means something different than what was originally intended by those words of valuing opinions and education and using that to come together to find a way forward to overcome the issue. And it seems like from what you were talking about, that really paid off well for you.
Hey, you know what? You said truth be told. Okay. It's a funny story. You see my long hair?
Yeah.
I only grew it out at Boeing because they said diversity and inclusion. I'm gonna see how diverse and inclusive they really are. That's the reason I grew it out, and I kept growing it, and it's still
good.
So it was like, okay, I guess they are. So
that's good. That's good. So a couple of things we picked up here. The company has to say that they value that, and then they have to show and live that they value that. It can't be in a hypocritical stance.
Right.
It sounds good on paper, but in reality, we're not doing that.
Right. Exactly.
So that's good. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for that. Thanks so much for the time that you've taken with us to talk about that. We've gained a lot of good information, a lot of good pieces and tips and tricks, and I'm going to pull those out here at the end and put in a little segment where I highlight some of those things. Before we end up today, what comes to mind that you'd like to share with us that we probably missed in our discussion?
I can't be said enough. People are your number one assets. If you take it as a supervisor, that the more your subordinates know, the less you have to do, everybody's well off. If you need to train your replacement. We talked, that was beat to our heads in the military, training replacement. Mm-hmm. And I do understand that in the corporate world, you train a replacement, you need to train yourself out of a job, right? But I guess lucky for me, being a retiree, I'm not so much worried about that. If I do train myself out of a job because I have the skill sets to find another job, and I'm not affected financially, if you would, if I would have to lose my job, let's say for 6, 8, 9 months, I'll say, okay, I guess I got a vacation coming. But I guess I'm one of those one-off deals, right? Mm-hmm. But if you take that mindset of, hey, I need to train my replacement, and I try to hoard the information, man, your job supervisor, you're like, this is easier than being a worker, and then your subordinates will work that much harder because they want to work. Mm-hmm. Not so much they want to work. I try to tell that to everybody. Man, if you get the people to want to work, you have to empower them. Give them all the information they can handle. Even give them more if they don't. Like, good Lord, no more information. I can't take it. So what? Here goes some more. Just keep pouring, because I believe in you. You're the best. Here's some more information. You can handle it, and that's what you do. You just overwhelm them, and it's sort of like, I spoke truth. I spoke power and belief into that person when they didn't know they had it. And that's the biggest thing. You got to just learn people. Because people make the world go round.
Thank you. That's a very wise counsel and advice. I'm glad we talked about that here. Then that's awesome because it really is true. That is true. Giving them truth, giving them power to act on the information they have, and then respecting that action that they take really does allow all the subordinates and everybody around to see that they got a chance to do something that was difficult. You gave them the ability to do it. They did it. And oftentimes, I know from my anecdotal experience, the few times that I was allowed to do that, I actually exceeded the expectations because I was allowed to come up with other things that weren't necessarily on the expectation list, but they improved the performance, they improved the process.
Right. And I always tell your subordinates too, hey, you're going to work hard, but I'm going to take credit for your work.
I don't know if we want to do that, but that's
in a jokingly manner. Say, hey, I tell people this all the time because it's the truth because it happens. All right.
It does. It does. As a CEO, you take credit for the trillions of dollars or billions of dollars the business did, even though you technically didn't do all of that. So yes, that's a fact in business and in organizations. That's the job of the leader. You make those things happen. You move it. And so
I tell them that all the time. Say, hey, in a jokingly manner, it's, hey, you know what? You're going to do great work, and because you do great work, I'm going to sit back and take credit for it. You do such great work, you know. I say, hey, I tell them just like my boss will take credit for my work that he didn't do. It rolls downhill.
Mm-hmm.
So
it does, but it feeds both ends of the process. So you get credit for it because you allowed it to happen. You fostered the environment, the culture to make it happen, and then the employee did it because of that culture and that opportunity they were given. So that's pretty.
Right.
That's a good way to put it. So awesome. What's the legacy that Dr. McCarrell wants to leave behind?
The only way to put it is that I was an equal opportunity butthole to everybody. Okay?
Oh, okay.
I was fair across the board. I took care of people. I showed no favoritism, and I jumped on the sword when things got bad, without hesitation. You know what I'm saying? That's my work legacy. That's what I also try to steal in my kids. When stuff goes bad, it's my fault. When stuff goes good, hey, you did that. You know? And that's, even though I learned that in the military, I wasn't too fond of it. It's kind of one of those deals where, you know what? Maybe it was onto something there, you know? So, it's just that they can never say, oh man, he showed favor. No, everyone got it. Equal opportunity. Jerk to everybody. So
doesn't sound like you're being a jerk if you're falling on the sword for people, but you're giving them the credit for the things they do. I think we could use a few more of those types of jerks running around in the public sector or any sector for that matter.
Exactly.
Because that sounds direct opposite. That's a polar opposite to what we hear of some leaders around the world and news stories and such. So God bless you, man. God bless you for that. Keep up the good work on that.
Thank you, my good man.
As we finish up, do you have any projects that you're working on that you would like to share with our listeners, our readers?
See, I'm declassifying in my head. No.
Okay. Fair enough.
No, yeah.
As
I know.
As a contractor, many of those things are classified, and we don't want to get into that. So, thank you.
I still like my paycheck still.
Awesome.
Or I feel the four walls with.
Okay, well, we don't want to do that because that insinuates prison time. So we're not a fan of that. So we'll stay away from that. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, sir, for your time and for meeting with us and talking with us and sharing this great information that we have. It's going to be valuable for the report. It's going to be valuable for any of the new leaders that are listening in and trying to gain some tidbits and wisdom to move forward and do a better job right off the bat. So thanks so much for your time today. And we're super excited. Maybe we'll get to talk to you again at another time about a different topic.
All right, good sir. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Wow. Talking with Dr. McCarrell today was fun and a wealth of knowledge. It's great to catch up. In today's discussion, we found several hidden treasures regarding leadership during culture change. Dr. Mack shared that middle managers set the pulse and the tone of the organization, and when they don't stay in touch with their people, problems show up. Leaders have to get to know their people before a significant change or culture shift happens. That way they can mitigate the issues. For successful culture change, leaders need to do a few things. Number one, understand the constraints and requirements, communicate them to their people, and hold feedback sessions to help manage their long-term goals and culture shift and organizational priorities. Additionally, Dr. Mack discussed preparing for significant changes by holding daily tag-ups, where the supervisor can discuss family goals and life and work with their people in a short, informal discussion setting. These allow leaders to gain insight and respect, loyalty, and trust. With the insight gained during these tag-ups, leaders need to then empower their people and allow them to exercise responsibility when a problem comes up. Leaders can move past the knee-jerk reaction then of the, what were you thinking? And then ask more in-depth, curious questions to gain insight and focus on the good that was accomplished instead of just the negative. Dr. Mack also discussed that leaders must reframe negative action conversations into positive ones. Failure is typically the best teacher. Allowing everyone in a space to fail and learn empowers them and gives them creativity and ingenuity. There is no need to demoralize people. As leaders treat everyone as adults who want to do a good job and show caring and respect for them, they create an environment where people can freely express themselves and share ideas. Lastly, Dr. Mack encouraged leaders to foster team growth by having the tenured employees meet, mingle, and work with the new employees. People are the number one asset in and out of culture change. As we give them all the information that they need to do their job, they will make the leader's job easier because they'll do their job better. If you found as many treasures as I did on this excursion with Dr. Mack, please join me next time as I continue the hunt for leadership treasures.